My buddies and I, we started a time travel club. You want to join? Oh, really? Yeah, it sounds like fun. When's your first meeting? It's going to be 2 weeks ago Thursday. Okay, round 2, Project Failblazer. Where we left off last time is I took off the entire suspension, spindle, the upper control arm, the lower control arm, pretty much everything off in one piece. The strut came off with it as well. See, we've got those sitting down over here. So that's where we left off with part 1. Today, part 2, we're going to be going after the power steering rack. We're going to get that off. We're also going to look at taking out the power steering pump. I know the pump itself on this one is leaking pretty bad, and then we're going to be going and kind of exploring the air conditioning issue with this Trailblazer. The previous owner said that it didn't work, and they bought a new, well, a used compressor and threw it in the back of the truck when we bought it. So I just tested to see if there's any pressure on it, and it's got pressure in the system still. So I don't know, maybe if I put more Freon on it, maybe the clutch will kick on and it'll work. Or not. The compressor itself could just be shot. I don't know. So we'll explore that today too. So first thing we're going to do is take off the power steering rack, and then we're going to go after power steering pump. After all that's done, then we should be ready to start taking parts off of the parts truck. So we'll see how far today goes. I've got several hours to work on this today, so let's get started. All right, so I'm going after the steering rack. First thing I'm looking at is the reservoir, how much fluid's in it. This thing has a pretty severe leak, so it's actually empty. Otherwise, I would get like a turkey baster and suck out the fluid, or potentially just remove that soft line right there and let it drain out from there. What I'm looking at here is underneath the truck, we've got this brace here, same thing over here, a couple of bolts. I want to be able to get this out. I think I'm going to need to get this off so that I can just drop the power steering rack straight down. The steering box and everything's so big, I don't think it'll ever come out this way, so we have to remove these plates here. Bolts inside of these little cups here that actually hold the power steering rack in place. So I'm going to get these out. The steering column needs to be unbolted from it, and the lines need to be removed. There are actually 3 15mm bolts right here. There are 2 up at the top and 1 down low in the bottom. The one low in the bottom is the one we want to get out. Alright, now I'm going after the steering column bolt. Just lift this rubber boot up right there, and it's a 15mm bolt right there. Just need to undo that. Well, that boot is really annoying. Now we're going after the bolt that holds the steering rack in. The bolts are inside these little cups that are connected to the frame. The head of the bolt is on the opposite side of this frame here. You'd get your 13/16 socket on there. The thing is, there's a nut on the end of this bolt, and the drive shaft is right here, and it's hard to get can't get a socket on there for anything. But if you take your 13/16 spark plug socket, you can slide that in there just fine, and that'll slide on the end of the nut there. Now I've got a box end, 7/8, and then you can hold this side tight or have it push up against the frame rail or whatever, and get underneath the truck and get to the other side of the bolt, the head of the bolt, and break it loose that way. I'm not sure how well you can see this, but just above the drive shaft I've got a 1/4 inch drive extension, an 8mm little socket, because there's a small 8mm bolt that's holding in the lines, the power steering fluid lines, into the steering box. I've got my bucket ready to catch any fluid that comes out. Alright, I'm underneath the driver's side. You can see where I've unplugged those 2 lines. That 8mm bolt did the trick, and just took a little screwdriver and put it between the plate and the steering box and kind of wiggled it loose and got the lines out. So go ahead and pull out this whole steering rack now. Okay, driver's side pulled. Alright, you can see just where the fitting was in that little 8mm bolt. That's where the 15mm bolt connects to the steering column. Alright, now I'm going to go after the power steering pump right here. I'm going to remove the air box just to give myself a little bit more room to see. There's a screw right here. Screw right back up here, right next to the washer fluid reservoir. And get this little bar out of the way. Another little screw right down here I didn't notice. Looks like it was already loosened. There you go. Since I've got this off, I'm going to put a new air filter in. I went ahead and loosened the clamp that's on the snorkel. Get a screwdriver, lift this little tab right up here, and you can take that sensor off. Okay, right here and right underneath the AC line, directly underneath it, is another 13mm bolt. Got a couple of wires plugged in to these motors. We need to undo the harnesses. And then set that up out of the way. Alright, now we're going to take the serpentine belt off. I like to use a box end wrench just to get some leverage. Alright, there are 3 bolts that are holding this whole power steering unit on, but before we do that, we got to disconnect the lines that are going into the power steering pump. Okay, there's a rubber line that goes to the back side here that's held on with just a little clamp, so I'm just going to use my pliers here to grab a hold of that clamp and loosen it. Okay, low pressure side's off. Alright, now I'm going for this lower fitting. It's a 5/8 nut on this fitting, so get my wrench. Now we'll get these 3 bolts, and you can go through the pulley because the pulley has these holes. Okay, this is what, 13? Yeah, 13mm bolt. Like I said, there are 3, one here at the top, one to the right, and one underneath, right directly underneath the shaft of the pulley. Alright, I'm ready to move the parts truck onto the patio. I threw a battery in it. It does not have the fan shroud in it. No big deal. We're just going to go about 50 feet. So we're going to see if we can fire this baby up and move it onto the patio and get it lifted up off the ground and start taking parts off of it. slight knock-in. Okay, got the power steering pump off of the parts truck. I also took off the coolant reservoir tank. I believe the one on mine leaks, so I'm going to be replacing mine with that one. So I've got the power steering pump ready to go on. I've got to go find my kit that has different O-rings in it. I'll try to replace that O-ring on that bottom fitting there. Alright, there's a 13mm bolt right here next to the fender. 10mm nut right here on the wheel well. And then there's another 10mm bolt right here on this bracket that holds the accumulator in place. Okay, this little clamp right here slides right into that little groove, and that holds the accumulator in place. I was pretty sure that it was leaking. Well, I just filled it up with water, and I don't see a leak anywhere, so I basically took this thing off for nothing. So I'm going to put this back on. Alright, I'm all set to put the power steering pump on from the parts truck. I'll go ahead and get these bolts started. Do my best to try not to cross thread them. Okay, I'm getting ready to put my fitting back on the high pressure line. I put a replacement O-ring on there. I had just an O-ring kit in my toolbox and just found the one that fit the best. I don't know, cross my fingers, hopefully that'll be the right one, that'll stay on there. I'm going to push the fitting up all the way and then bring up the nut to start threading it. I hope not to cross thread it, because then it'll go to leaking real bad. I'll take my 5/8 wrench, tighten it down. Okay, now we're going to put the low pressure hose on. I'll move this clamp down. Alright, with the power steering pump back in place, I'm going to go ahead and put everything back in. The wiper fluid reservoir, the air box, the snorkel, and get that all back where it belongs. Alright, so yesterday afternoon I finished up by putting the passenger side components back under the hood and got the Serpentine belt back on. My thought was I would work on kind of testing the air conditioning, and then I realized, duh, I can't do that because the steering rack is out and the power steering pump and all that's not hooked back in yet, so I'm not really going to mess with that. Can't mess with it right now. So what I decided I'm going to do today, and I just have a very short time to do anything on these vehicles today, is to just get the silver Trailblazer up off the ground, get the front wheels off, loosen the hub nut, and maybe get a couple of bolts loosened on the steering rack, just to see how far I can get in the short amount of time that I've got. So we're just going to get the parts truck up off the ground and pretty much call it a day. we are ready to really tear into the parts truck and get the parts off that I need in the next video. I think the first thing I'm going to work on is getting that steering rack out, get it installed on my wife's Blazer, get the power steering all buttoned back up together, that way I can get the engine running and have the accessory belt run without damaging the power steering pump, and check the air conditioner next. Well, that's all the time I've got for today, so we're going to end the video here. So thanks again for watching. I hope you liked it. God bless, and be sure to hit that like switch on your way out. We'll see you next time.